3 years ago, two little girls vanished in their family's farm, leaving behind a shattered community and a mystery that haunted rural Iowa. When a rusted milk can pull from creek revealed a horrifying truth, it seemed the case was closed, until a loyal K-9 named Rex walked into a courtroom with a brown bag in his jaws. What was inside? It exposed a secret so shocking it saved his handler's life. The screen fades into a golden Iowa sunrise, cornfields swaying the breeze. The sound of crickets and a distant tractor hum fills the air. A woman's silhouette kneels in a vegetable garden, her hands buried in the soil. Grace Whitfield's hands were caked with dirt as she pulled weeds from her tomato patch that July morning in 2018. The Iowa sun was already fierce, promising another blistering day on the family farm. She could hear her husband Garrett's tractor rumbling in the distance, a comforting sound after 23 years of marriage. Their daughters, Nora, 8, and Cora, 11, were at the roadside egg stand, a routine they loved, counting coins, waving at neighbors, their giggles carrying on the breeze. Grace smiled, brushing sweat from her brow, leaving a streak of earth across her skin. Then came the crunch of gravel. Grace looked up to see Sheriff Tom Daniels' cruiser pulling into the driveway, followed by two unmarked cars. Her stomach twisted. Police cars on a farm never meant good news. She stood, her knees aching from hours of kneeling, and wiped her hands on her faded jeans. Sheriff Daniels, a family friend who bought eggs from the girls' stand for years, stepped out with a look she'd never seen, part professional, part heartbroken. "Morning, Grace," he said softly, his voice heavy. Behind him, two strangers in suits emerged, Detectives Morrison and Chun from the state police. "We need to talk. Somewhere private." Grace's mouth went dry. "What's this about, Tom?" she asked, but he only gestured toward the house. Inside the kitchen, the linoleum still gleamed from yesterday's mopping. Grace pulled out chairs around the worn oak table, her muddy boots leaving faint prints. Detective Morrison, gray at the temples, spoke first, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. "Mrs. Whitfield, there's no easy way to say this. This morning, a magnet fisher pulled an old milk can from Cedar Creek. Inside were human remains, small remains. We believe they may be your daughter Nora's." The words hit like a punch. Grace's legs buckled, and she gripped the table, her knuckles whitening. "No," she whispered, then louder, "No, that's not possible. Nora and Cora are out there somewhere." Detective Chun turned the tablet toward her, her eyes soft but resolute. "Can you identify this milk can?" Grace forced herself to look. The screen showed a rusted muck-covered can, but the faded lettering was unmistakable. Farmhouse, with the cow logo her father-in-law had designed decades ago. "Oh, God," she breathed. "We had dozens of those before we switched to cooling tanks. We sold most at auction, kept some in the barn." Morrison swiped to another image, a glimpse of small bones wrapped in a blue tarp with yellow stripes. Grace turned away, bow rising. "I can't," she gasped. Chin closed the tablet gently. "The medical examiner will confirm with DNA, but the remains match a child Nora's age. The seal can preserve them enough for identification." Outside, the tractor engine cut off. Garrett burst through the door, his work shirt flapping, his face shifting from confusion to dread as he took in the scene. "What's happened?" he demanded. Sheriff Daniels stood. "Garrett, sit down." "Tell me standing," Garrett said, his voice breaking. The sheriff repeated the news, each word aging Garrett years. He sank beside Grace, clutching her hand. "We're in Cedar Creek?" he asked hoarsely. "Near the old railroad bridge," Morrison replied. "Wedged under logs. If not for the magnet fisher, it might never have been found." Chin cleared her throat. "We need to search your property. The milk can came from your farm, making it a potential crime scene." Garrett's head snapped up. "You think we killed our own daughter?" Morrison's face stayed neutral. "We follow the evidence." Grace couldn't speak. The idea was monstrous. More vehicles arrived. Crime scene techs in white coveralls with metal detectors, evidence bags, cameras. Grace watched numbly as they swarmed the barn, the chicken coop, even the root cellar, treating their home like a murder scene. Garrett called their lawyer, Sarah Thornton, her voice sharp over phone. Within minutes, she sped up the driveway, demanding the warrant. "You're treating them as suspects based on a milk, and that could have been stolen years ago," she snapped. Morrison handed over the document. "We're just executing a lawful search." Grace's voice broke through. "One girl is still missing. Cora's out there." Sarah put a hand on her shoulder. "My clients cooperate, but no questioning without me present." The detectives agreed to complete the search and leave, promising to return for statements. As they left, Grace saw their neighbor Walter Brennan's truck slow at the driveway's end, his weathered face peering at the police tape. By nightfall, the county would know their tragedy was public. The camera pans to the farm at dusk, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. The sound of crickets grows louder. An hour later, Grace sat on the porch swing, her body curled tight. Garrett stood rigid against a railing, staring at the tire tracks scarring their lawn. The silence was suffocating until Walter's old Ford rumbled up. At 62, their neighbor moved with the careful gait of a lifelong farmer, his joints worn from decades of labor. "Grace, Garrett," he said, removing his cap. "I saw the police cars." "What happened?" Tears spilled down Grace's face. Garrett answered, his voice raw. "They found Nora in Cedar Creek in one of our old milk cans." Walter sat heavily, his knuckles white on the chair. "Dear Lord," he whispered, "I can't imagine what you're going through." His hands trembled, and Grace remembered his own loss, his son Daniel, killed in a grain silo accident 5 years ago. Walter understood grief. "They're treating us like suspects," Garrett said bitterly. Walter's face flushed. "That's insane. Anyone who knows you," he stood abruptly. "You shouldn't be alone. I'll handle the evening feeding. Horses, chickens, Buttercup special feed. I know the routine." Grace managed a weak smile. Walter knew their farm almost as well as they did, a neighbor who'd helped countless times. As Walter moved to the barn, another vehicle screeched into the driveway, a Channel 7 news van. Reporter Kelly Martinez, her dark hair perfect despite the heat, approached with a cameraman. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield, can we have a moment about this morning's discovery?" "No," Grace said, standing. "Leave. This is private property." But Martinez pressed closer. "The public deserves to know. Are the remains your daughter Nora's? Was the milk kin from your farm?" Garrett nodded cautiously. "We had those kins years ago. We sold most." Martinez's eyes sharpened. "Do you care to comment on accusations you murdered your daughter? Sources say you're suspects." Grace's knees buckled. "How dare you?" Garrett's voice was low, dangerous. "Get off our property." Martinez lingered, her camera rolling, before finally leaving. Grace noticed Walter's truck pause at the driveway's end, watching. The weight of public suspicion settled like dust. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. Garrett dozed on the couch, exhaustion overtaking him. She sat at the kitchen table, a cold coffee cup in her hands, her mind spiraling. Someone had killed Nora, dismembered her to fit in that can. The medical examiner's words echoed. Dismemberment, preservation conditions. Grace's stomach churned. Through the window, she saw headlights on Walter's back road, near his barn. He was probably doing maintenance, a creature of habit. She decided to walk over, asked to borrow his flatbed trailer for Nora's funeral chairs. Anything to keep moving. The night was humid. Crickets loud as Grace followed a familiar path along the fence line, her phone's flashlight cutting through the dark. She thought of Nora and Cora, how they'd love visiting Uncle Walter, petting his barn cats. The barn's light glowed faintly. She pushed open the door, hinges creaking. Walter was at his workbench, a kerosene lantern casting shadows. He jumped at the sound, a wrench clattering to the floor. "Grace, what are you doing here?" "I saw your lights," she said, feeling foolish. "I need to borrow your flatbed for the funeral." "Of course," Walter said, wiping his hands on his coveralls. He led her to the trailer hitch, explaining tie-downs and wiring. Grace's eyes wandered, landing on a denim jacket on a hay bale. Its pockets spilled out a wallet, keys, and a child drawing. Crayon colors showed a girl labeled Clara in a blue dress, holding a man's hand labeled Daddy. Hearts and a smiling sun framed them. The girl looked exactly like Cora at 11, her handwriting unmistakable. Grace's heart stopped. "Thank you," she stammered, forcing a neutral tone. "I should get back." She was steps from the door when Walter's voice turned cold. "You saw Clara's drawing, didn't you?" Grace froze, Walter's voice chilling her blood. "Don't lie to me, Grace. I see in your eyes." Before she could move, he grabbed a shotgun from nowhere, its barrel aimed at her chest. "Walk," he ordered, gesturing to the back of the barn. "Walter, please," Grace whispered. "Where's Cora?" "Clara," he corrected, his voice eerily calm. "Her name is Clara now. My daughter." He prodded her toward a hidden door in the barn's wall, so cleverly concealed she'd never noticed it in years of visits. "Down!" The wooden stairs creaked under her weight, the air growing colder, heavier with the stench of manure. At the bottom, another door opened to a sight that stole her breath, a pink-painted room with butterfly decals, a child's bed, a bookshelf of books, and, at a desk, drawing was Cora, taller now, her baby face gone but unmistakably her daughter. Cora's eyes, hollow and fearful, met Grace's. She flinched, scrambling into a corner. "Cora, baby, it's Mommy," Grace sobbed, stepping forward. "Stay where you are," Walter snapped, the gun steady. "You're scaring her." "Who is she?" Cora whispered to Walter. "Daddy, who is she?" The word Daddy cut like glass. "I've kept her safe," Walter said, his voice defensive. "She's happy, educated. She reads at a high school level." Grace's mind reeled. 3 years. Walter had kept Cora here, just across the fence, while they grieved. "And Nora," she choked out. Walter's face darkened. "She got sick. Pneumonia. I tried everything. Antibiotics, fever reducers. But I couldn't take her to a doctor. They'd have taken Clara." Grace's legs nearly gave out. Nora had died in this man's care, alone, afraid. "She's alive?" she whispered, eyes on Cora. "Clara," Walter corrected sharply. "She calls me Daddy now." Footsteps above made Grace's heart leap. Garrett's voice. "Walter, you in here? Have you seen Grace?" Walter's eyes darted to the stairs. "Not a sound," he hissed, pressing the gun to Grace's ribs. "Or I shoot you both." He climbed up, closing the door, leaving Grace with Cora, who stared at her like a stranger. "Cora, sweetie," Grace whispered, kneeling. "Remember our farm? Collecting eggs? Freckles, the speckle hen?" "My name is Clara," Cora said, voice small. "My parents died in a car accident. Daddy Walter saved me." Grace's heart shattered. Walter had rewritten her daughter's life. Something flickered in Cora's eyes, uncertainty, but she shook her head. Above, Grace heard Walter's casual lie. "She was here earlier, must have taken a long way back." Grace couldn't wait. She bolted for the stairs, fumbling the latch, bursting through. "Garrett, here's Cora," she screamed. Chaos erupted. Walter lunged for the shotgun he'd propped against the wall. Grace grabbed the barrel as he seized the stock. They struggled, the gun swinging wildly. Garrett launched himself at Walter, all three fighting for control. Grace's grip slipped. She let go, sending Walter stumbling back. She ran into the night, lungs burning, to call 911. "Walter Brennan has my daughter," she screamed into the phone. "He's had her for 3 years. My husband's fighting him. He has a gun." She grabbed Garrett's backup pistol from the kitchen drawer and ran back. Sirens wailed as she reached the barn, red and blue lights flooding the yard. SWAT officers swarmed, an ambulance trailing. Grace burst inside. Garrett stood over Walter, who clutched a bleeding leg. The shotgun had discharged in the struggle, hitting Walter. "There's a hidden room!" Grace yelled to the officers. She raced to the stairs, yanking open the door. Cora was still in the corner, tears streaming. "Daddy Walter!" she cried. Grace gathered her, holding tight despite Cora's struggles. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "You're safe." Police flooded the room, photographing the drawings, hundreds of them, showing Clara and Daddy in a happy, false world. Garrett joined them, tears falling as he wrapped his arms around Cora and Grace. Cora stiffened, calling for Walter, her confusion breaking their hearts anew. The scene shifts to a courtroom. 3 months later. The room is packed, tense. Walter's trial was the biggest in Cedar County history. Grace and Garrett sat in the front row. Cora at home with therapist, slowly relearning her true life. Walter, leg healed but face gaunt, faced charges of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. His confession had been chilling. He'd planned a kidnapping for months, building the hidden room, luring the girls with a lie about a church bake sale. Nora's death from untreated pneumonia, her body dismembered and hidden in the creek, was his attempt to deflect suspicion. Cora, renamed Clara, had been brainwashed into believing Walter was her father. The prosecution's case was ironclad. DNA, the drawings, the hidden room. But Walter's defense claimed insanity, arguing his grief over his son's death had broken him. Grace clutched Garrett's hand as the evidence mounted, each detail a fresh wound. Then came the moment that changed everything. Sheriff Daniels, now a key witness, entered the courtroom, followed by his K-9 Rex, a German Shepherd trained for search and rescue. Rex carried a brown paper bag in his jaws, placing it on the prosecution's table. The room went silent. Prosecutor Emily Carter opened the bag, her face paling. Inside was a child's backpack, tattered but intact, with Cora's name embroidered on it. This was found by Rex in a follow-up search of Walter's property, Carter said, voice steady. Hidden in a false wall in his attic. She pulled out a small, sealed plastic case. Inside was a blood-stained knife, Walter's hunting knife, used to dismember Nora. Gasps filled the courtroom. Grace's vision blurred with tears. The knife's presence tied Walter directly to Nora's murder, destroying his insanity plea. But there was more. Carter held up a folded note from the backpack, in Cora's childish handwriting. Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared. Uncle Walter won't let us go. The note was a lifeline for Sheriff Daniels. During the initial investigation, he'd been criticized for missing the hidden room, his friendship with Walter clouding his judgment. The guilt had nearly cost him his career. Rumors swirled he'd resign. Rex's find, prompted by a faint scent detected weeks after the barn search, restored his credibility and sealed Walter's fate. The camera zooms on the note, then cuts to Daniels petting Rex, his eyes wet with relief. Walter's face crumpled as the note was read aloud. The jury deliberated for only an hour before returning a guilty verdict, life without parole. Grace and Garrett wept, holding each other, knowing Nora's justice was served, though Cora's healing would take years. The screen fades to the Whitfield farm at sunrise, a new day dawning. Cora, now 14, was slowly remembering. Flashes of egg collecting pancake mornings. Therapy was helping. But her trust in Walter lingered, a painful reminder of the years stolen. Grace and Garrett vowed to be patient,